Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week, I'm talking with Paul Macaluso, the CEO of Another Broken Egg Café, a breakfast, brunch, and lunch franchise with 100-plus locations. Another Broken Egg aims to stand out from a crowded family dining segment with a creative New Orleans-inspired menu. And it just announced a new lunch menu featuring salads, jambalaya, gumbo, and more in an effort to beef up its lunch daypart in particular as it wrestles with the same traffic issues that most of the industry is dealing with today. Paul joined the podcast to talk about the new menu and how Another Broken Egg is leaning into innovation to both maximize its existing business and widen its opportunity to draw business, both new and old. In this interview, you will learn more about why Daypart expansion is a potential traffic driver, why squeezing more out of your busiest periods is an efficient way to grow, and why seasonal menus are a fast way to stand out from competitors. Jumping now into my interview with Another Broken Egg's Paul Macaluso. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 4 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, I'm sitting down with Paul Macaluso, the CEO of Another Broken Egg Café. Paul, thanks for joining me today.
Great to be here, Sam. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So, Paul, I want to talk about Another Broken Egg's lunch menu. I know you guys have developed this new lunch menu, but first for those, I'm sure most of our listeners know, of course, but for those who are not as familiar with Another Broken Egg or don't have one in their community, what's the quick description of this brand?
We are an upscale breakfast, lunch, and brunch restaurant. We are open from 7 to 2, 7 to 3 on the weekends. Elevated brunch, full bar, great Southern inspired menu.
All right. So I guess very important to this conversation is, could you give me an idea of sort of the mix of the day parts? So how much is breakfast, brunch, lunch?
Yeah, it's interesting because, in other brands I worked in, it's, if you were open, like it's when I was at Sonic, right? You were open, you had a very distinctive breakfast period for 4 or 5 hours. You had lunch, you had a dinner, late evening. We're only open 7 hours a day. So we do carve it up into 3 day parts, but our menu is available the whole time. Some people will get, pancakes at 2 p.m. We really we bucket it by the hours, but the menu is very flexible throughout that. Some people like eggs for lunch. Some people like a burger for at 8 a.m. So we roughly we're roughly about 20% breakfast, which would, for us, would be 7 to 9, and then brunch 9 to 11, and so that's the majority of our business. Those brunch hours, especially on the weekends, and then lunch is after 11 to 2. So that's kind of how we define the day parts for ourselves, and that's another about 20% or so.
Does your head chef ever struggle to develop brunch? I mean, as a brunch customer, I'm always like, am I in the mood for a sandwich or am I in the mood for eggs? I imagine that's a little hard for a chef to figure that out, right?
Yeah, we've actually, it's interesting because as we talk about how this lunch menu evolved, we've been so focused on brunch over the last few years. It's really become second nature to us. We've always done a great job developing compelling new brunch items and innovating around it. So we've got we've got a lot of variety there. What we consider brunch items. It's been a lot of fun to work on. To be honest with you, it's been really fun to work on and innovate around brunch.
Sure. All right. So before we get into getting into some of these new menu innovations, I do want to set the scene here because, I mean, your category has been hot for the last couple of years. And obviously, you've got a lot of competitors. You got folks jumping into this category all the time. How do you guys differentiate yourself when all of you guys are open roughly the same hours, roughly, with the same pitch as far as menu goes broadly? How do you guys really carve out that differentiation?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. And, even other brands I've been on, it's always a challenge, right? Whenever you come up with something really unique, it's not too long before some of your competitors copy you, right? It's just that's how the restaurant business works, right? When something works, you see others follow. The foundation of Another Broken Egg is really been based right outside of New Orleans. So there's been a lot of influence of New Orleans on our menu, full bars. We've always had full bars, a lot of alcohol, you gotta love New Orleans for that. But the seafood, seafood's been a big part. Lobster and brie omelet, shrimp and grits, We've got crab cake Benedict, like a lot of that plays through. But the reality is, to your point, a lot of our competitors are open 7 to 2 or 7 to 3. We have, we have great elevated menu items, in terms of the quality of the ingredients playing a little bit higher than some of the legacy breakfast players, right? So there hasn't been a ton of difference. One of our largest competitor, launched alcohol a couple of years ago. So that was one thing that we were really known for, that they've started getting into, intruding into that space. We've all updated our facilities to have this kind of modern farmhouse look. So those lines start to bleed. So it has been a challenge to continue to be differentiated. But that's super important to us, right? So that's why we've leaned into alcohol even more. A couple of years ago, when our competitors got into it, we leaned more into alcohol. We brought in more premium brands. We saw that really post-pandemic. People started, were drinking more, although that started to wane. And so now, and then we continue to innovate around seasonal items to continue to elevate the quality of our ingredients and more premium nature. But and we continue to push a lot of seafood related products, because that is still seems to be a part of the menu that is distinctive.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what you're sharing here, I mean,
Mhm.
comes back to experience, right? And
Mhm.
it must be that experience is so important. Again, when I think of this from a consumer standpoint, if I'm going out for breakfast or brunch, it's because I want that sort of relaxed nature of slow
Mhm.
Saturday, slow Sunday. I just want to
Mhm.
kind of go have a meal in a restaurant. And I imagine, with alcohol, of course, that playing into it, with the ambiance of your restaurants, that
Right.
playing into it. So how much for you do you find that experience does play a role in driving the guest visit at Another
Yeah.
Broken Egg?
It's a huge part. It is really a huge part. And as I finished the answer to my previous question, I was like, oh, I should have talked more about experience, because
Sure.
it ultimately is. It is a huge part of what we do. We're full service, right? So we're coming to your table. We're taking your order there. We're continuing to do table touches and bring additional, just kind of making sure you're happy with everything. We come back at the end of the meal and we take your check there. So it is a very full service experience. It is our mission is as much about the great food as it is the amazing experience. So when we talk to our operators, it's an equal balance of making sure that when people come in, they feel really well taken care of. Service is one of our main 5 values. Like, we only people that are successful working for us have a service mentality, right? They enjoy taking care of other people. It's not in everybody's makeup, but the most successful people with us enjoy taking care of others and serving others, and so that's an essential part of what makes us unique.
Sure. So further kind of setting the stage here, I know that one of the reasons why you guys have developed this new lunch menu that we're going to talk about here in a second is to drive traffic, because lunch
Mhm.
being maybe a little bit slower than your other day parts, you guys are bringing some attention to it. But of course, to talk about traffic more broadly, of course, the whole industry is struggling with traffic right now, because
Yep.
as inflation continues to be an issue, customers are deciding to stay home a lot more often. And so
Mhm.
everybody's trying to drive traffic. And I guess what I'm curious from you is, for Another Broken Egg, but also broadly the breakfast brunch category, where is traffic right now?
Yeah, yeah, it has been a real challenge for us. Being a premium price point, being a premium brand, it's certainly, we felt it, I think, more than the average restaurant brand. We don't do discounting, we don't do a lot of dealing. Um, so that has left us a little bit, challenged there to with these traffic issues. And then, we face some unique challenges too. Our segment faces some unique challenges too, because we saw so much of a benefit post COVID, where people came back and they wanted to be connected, they wanted to indulge, they wanted to be around people. So 2021 was an amazing year for us. I mean,
Yeah.
we had record setting sales. And so as people have now gone back to the office a bit more, as their wallets have tightened up a bit, we've seen a little bit of a coming back to reality, to it, that norm. I mentioned our alcohol business. Our alcohol business was up over 20% in 2021 versus 2019. We saw our
Wow.
alcohol sales Monday through Thursday up 40%. I mean, people were
Well,
just like, it was a good time. So we've seen our alcohol business kind of stable, come back to the middle a little bit. Still growth over 19. We've got into mocktails because of that. So we continue to react, but overall traffic has definitely been a challenge this year. In the last part of last year, we've seen that across our industry and our segment for sure. So that's led to part of this insight on working more on lunch for sure.
Yeah, and how much when you have traffic down? I mean, when you are looking for solutions to
Mhm.
improve traffic, I mean, if you look out to the QSR space, of course, we're looking at discounting and
Mhm.
value.
Right.
The lever that you guys pulled here, and that we're going to talk about in a bit, and I promise we'll get to it. That's a little bit of a different decision, is
Right.
to lean into innovation. Tell me
Mhm.
about your thought process as
Mhm.
CEO,
Yeah.
when you choose to pull that lever of innovation to capture the guest attention, not the necessarily the discounting part.
Yeah. I've had the pleasure of working at QSR brands, fast casual brands. This is, my first full service experience. I've been here almost 5 years now. And it's fun because it's a challenge. You've got to think differently, depending on what segment you're in and what your brand's known for, what your strengths are. Yeah. So a couple years ago, we benefited from launching off premise, which we were not doing at all. And we saw significant growth in traffic and sales because it was a new segment of our business. So similarly, I look at opportunities of what does the guest need? What are their kind of key pain points with us? And how can we continue to serve them better? And so we lean into, service, just making sure that we're executing. We're known for great service. Let's make sure we're elevating it. We had a big push on, guest star ratings and continue to increase that. And we saw some improvements there to help drive traffic, not your traditional ways of driving traffic, but just leaning into your strengths of service. We did some technology initiatives. Our biggest, half of our business is on the weekends, as you can imagine.
Hmm.
We have limited hours. We have tons of wait time on the weekends, which is a good problem to have. So how can we use technology to be more efficient in our table turns so we can get more people through, so people don't have to wait as long? And we've reduced our table turns, where this is the time it takes to clear checks and take orders because of technology, and that's improved our traffic. But here's another opportunity, right? It's when you think about it from a multifaceted, from technology, operations, and here menu design, there are still plenty of opportunities to improve your business for sure.
Yeah. So you guys have chosen this route now with your new lunch menu to lean into that innovation, to say,
Mhm.
let's improve our lunch day part business. We're finally ready to talk about it. Let's talk about the
Mhm.
lunch menu. Get
Yeah.
into it. Tell me a little bit more about some of these items. And I know, I mean, sandwiches, salads. It gets
Yep.
into those New Orleans roots with
Right.
gumbo,
There
jambalaya.
you
Tell me
go.
more about the
Yeah.
menu you developed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that insight that we talked about, right? We leaned heavily into brunch because that's where people were coming out of the pandemic. We're all about. And now that that's subsided, people are maybe going back to the office more than they were before. We look at the other part of our business that's typically more frequently dined. There's only so many times people are going to come to brunch. But lunch obviously is a much more frequent day part. When people are going to come to lunch, they're going out almost every day or every couple of days for lunch. So we had some lunch items on the menu. We had a pretty nice menu: some sandwiches, some burgers, some chicken sandwiches. But we said, like, we're going to go after this and stop focusing so much on brunch and focusing on breakfast, brunch, and lunch. And so that's really the insight behind it. So yes, to your point, we've had several items. We launched 7 new items on our lunch menu. Really called it out more on our menu. Obviously, marketing it more heavily. We've really made that part of our menu more robust. We've already had great items. We added a couple salads, blackened shrimp salad, again, pulling in that seafood. So that's a great one. The jambalaya, the brunch jambalaya we added, that's tremendous. The Louisiana gumbo is unique to us. So we've got several new unique items, and we also created the menu in a unique way to deliver value, right? So we don't have discounts, we don't have super low prices, but we created this duos, which is an option for people to choose an entree and a side, a soup or a side, similar to what other brands do for lunch. And this creates value in a couple ways, Sam, as you well know. There's value in choice, right? So if someone's like, "Oh, I don't know what to get, but I can get 2 things and I can mix and match them," there's value there, right? So we're offering a lot of choice there on the lunch menu, and we're starting it at 10.99. So it is a pretty compelling price point for us. 10.99 is about what we see people are consider a good price for lunch. And so, that's our way to get into this without discounting existing items, but creating it. And we also have are known a lot for our huge portions. We have tremendous portions for brunch, and that's not really what people typically think of for lunch, right? Especially if you got to go back to the office or whatever, you don't want to be, in a coma. So, so our portions are a little bit smaller too on these duos, so that allows us to have a more compelling price point. So there's a lot of strategy that went into this menu design.
Sure. Well, you mentioned that people going back to work, but you've also mentioned bulk of your business being the weekend. So clearly,
Mhm.
you're also thinking a lot about how do I get in weekday business, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
is that a big part of the strategy, finding those weekday businesses or
Yeah,
customers?
absolutely. Yeah, there's only so much more we can do on the weekends, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
good problem, but we're packed. We're packed. We've got waits. We actually extended our hours till 3 o'clock last year. We went from 2 to 3 on the weekends to try to help get more traffic there. That was still growing, but to your point, we've got a lot of opportunity in the middle of the week. We have some cafes in certain markets that are busy every single day of the week, and we see that what that average unit volume can be if you can do that. So we had a lot of discussions about it. Our franchisees came to us and said, "Yeah, I think it would be great if we can get more business during the week. We can even go a little bit later during the week if we have the right menu." But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and then it allows us to do more catering too. We do some breakfast catering, but now we've got these great menu items. We can do more catering back to people back to office. So it's going to bolster some of our other parts of our business as well as those days of the week.
I imagine the bulk of your locations are suburban. Tell me about, especially as you look at weekday businesses, or you look at trying to get customers in for lunch, for a work
Mhm.
lunch, perhaps. Are
Mhm.
you located more residential, more business? How do you capture that audience?
Yeah, we have a variety. I mean, we have some downtown locations, we have some suburban locations. We've got, we're near office parks in some cases. It's really, at our 103 restaurants, we're in a variety of options. So in some cases, if people are in office parks, they're going to benefit more from the catering, of these items, and more of just the business lunch. Some suburbans, it'll be more, families and moms coming in, with friends in the middle of the week. So it really will depend, but we've designed the menu in a way we think we have appeal to a variety of different consumers.
Sure. When developing new menu items, I mean, obviously you risk bringing in new SKUs, adding some
Yeah.
complexities.
Mhm.
Tell me about the process of developing this menu, because again, thinking about how you're closed at 3, and your team's
Mhm.
not probably going to want to work much
Mhm.
longer than that.
Right.
So you've got a tight window here that you're serving this menu. So I
Mhm.
imagine you have to sort of temper how much you develop there for that time frame. What's that balance like as you
Yeah.
guys develop this and finding those complexities?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big part of what we do, and 7 new items is quite a bit. That's we typically do some seasonal rotation of 3 or 4 items 4 times a year, but we did that on the seasonal part of our menu plus the 7 on the lunch. So it was quite a big launch for us. We did thorough testing, new product development process, a lot of ideation with our key vendors and our executive chef and team. A lot of ideation with our franchisee committee that helps us kind of optimize that. We went to 13 cafes for about 6 months to test these out, make some changes, delete some things, add some things through that process. Yeah, it's a pretty robust process to make sure that we get it right and that we can minimize the impact to operations as much as possible. But to your point, it's you know, we don't want to have things that are wasted or not used properly. We actually were able to actually increase the usage of some things that are menu that we were kind of underutilized. And so that's all worked out well. And then, there's a lot of, technology that's come a long way in food technology that makes it easier to like package things and split the use of them, so you don't have to make humongous batches of things in case you don't sell a ton of one or the other. So it's been a very long journey to get this to this place, but we feel really good about how it's going so far.
You mentioned your franchisees. Yeah, tell me about the interaction with them and how you get their
Mhm.
feedback. I imagine they were the ones who might have told you, like, "Hey, we need something for lunch. We really want to drive traffic this way."
Yeah, absolutely. We were in a franchise advisory committee meeting. We were talking about it was with my head of marketing, Brandy Blackwell. We were talking about this. We're talking about we wanted to pivot to this area and think about it. We brought it up with the franchisees, and they were like, hallelujah, we've been talking about this for years, and so we've been thinking about it. So yes, they were very supportive. A couple of them were involved in the test, so when we go out to test market, we intentionally we have 44 corporate locations, and the other 50 plus are franchise locations, so we got a nice variety, and so we can put these items in their restaurants, and then we visit them through the test. Throughout the test, we're getting feedback from our GMs and the franchise GMs, and so they're very integrated into this whole process, and even how we market it, right? So we talked about the launch of this, and we actually have a pretty aggressive offer out there for basically a free entree with the purchase of another lunch entree. So that's something we haven't done a lot of, but we know this is a new thing for us. People maybe only think about us for brunch and they aren't thinking about us for lunch. So we need to change some behaviors and some awareness. So we've been pretty aggressive in that, and franchisees have been involved in that decision as well.
Sure. So you've mentioned, your career. You've been with several brands. You've, I'm sure, experienced a lot of menu rollouts in your career. As somebody who's been through this before and are now guiding the brand as a CEO, what are some KPIs that you look for? What are some, what would ROI look like on a new menu rollout like this?
Yeah, it's I've done a lot of it. And middle part of my career, I was in marketing, progressive marketing roles. I was in new product development at Burger King and also at Sonic. So I've done a lot of new product marketing and development. It's a passion of mine, a love of mine. I'm not as involved in it, from all the details today, but it's there are some things that ring true, right, from those other brands that I've been a part of that had very sophisticated testing processes. We pull a lot of those things to smaller brands. We don't have the budgets. We don't have maybe all the steps that you have because you don't have the consumer research budget here at a 100 restaurant chain that you have at a 7,000 restaurant chain. But there's some of the things that ring true, right? So we're gonna do ideation. We're going to put concepts in front of consumers and make sure it works. But as it actually gets to the store level, and we're actually going to make a decision whether to roll it or not, we're looking at the mix, right? How much of these things are you selling? Are you selling enough to utilize the ingredients every day? And then is it incremental, right? So you're doing a baseline, and are you seeing a growth in these items? So for us, we looked at the lunch, all the items that were in the lunch menu before, and I told you we added 7. So we're looking at what's the total mix of the lunch items, and did we see an increase in mix? And so that's important. Then we look at the profitability of the menu, right? So some of these items are more expensive than others, but are we impacting sales enough to make sure that we're not only increasing sales but also increasing profit? We don't want to just increase sales and actually make less money. So we look at penny profit of each item and then penny profit of the entire category. We look at traffic. That's how we started the conversation, right? It's all about traffic. And do we see incremental traffic coming in? And do we see incremental sales coming in? So those are some of the main things we look at as we evaluate the test and as we actually now look at the actual launch.
And I've been curious. Of course, here at NRN, we're getting flooded with announcements of new deals, discounts, value meals. Obviously the industry is responding at large to the issues with traffic. And what I'm curious about generally is, how much is a Band-Aid and how much is a permanent solution? And I'm curious from your perspective, when you look at something like, our traffic is down, let's slap a Band-Aid on this and then we'll rip it off next year, versus how much do we change this brand in its DNA for the long term and sort of reap that long term? What do you look at when you're looking at those kinds of things?
Yeah, it's exactly right. When with a premium brand, we don't want anything that damages the long-term health of this brand. It's a young brand that's growing. We grew at 20% last year in new stores. We're going to grow at about 15% new stores this year. We've got some great things happening. I don't want to do anything to damage the brand and bring in customers that are not really going to be long-term customers, or sacrifice, profits and for our franchisees for the sake of improving the short-term numbers. It's just not, what is going to make this brand work long-term. We've got a lot of great things happening in the pipeline. So I'm very confident in that. So yes, so that's kind of what led us to this decision, right? We were very focused on brunch. We actually, in our brand, our vision statement was to be the premier brand for elevated brunch. And as we've now talked about it, we've actually changed it to say, wait, maybe we focused on brunch too much. Maybe we actually are open till 2:00. So so fundamentally, even though it's just words on a statement, but it does affect our mentality. And it's like, okay, we're upscale breakfast, brunch, and lunch. And so, that's where we're headed now for the next 5+ years. We're gonna continue to make sure we talk about brunch, but we're gonna continue to push into this lunch area. There's a lot of opportunity, as you said. As you figured out as we were talking about our days of the week, we've got a lot of upside and Monday through Friday. And so there's opportunities for us to drive business there. And so that's how we were kind of shifting in our focus as we move into this kind of next set. And as next month, I'll be with the brand 5 years. I came in, I set a 5-year plan. So this is actually perfect. It's always time to kind of reevaluate. And we've been through a lot of change in the last 5 years. And so hopefully this will set us up for success. For
Yeah,
the next
what's
5
happened in the last 5 years? Anything really happened in the
It's
last
been
5 years?
unbelievable.
I just did that math in my head. I'm like, gosh, that feels like another
Is that
world
crazy?
ago.
It's been a blur. It's been the fastest 5 years I can recall. So it's been a lot of fun though.
We'll be studying it someday, I'm sure.
Yes.
I want to touch on one last thing too before we go, which is the concept of value. You mentioned
Yeah.
value.
Yeah.
My colleague Alicia Kelso just wrote this great story yesterday about data that's showing that fast casual and to an extent casual brands are actually starting to win the value wars. As the definition of value really does start to change from being that what's the lowest price point I can get to something more around quality, accessibility, and those kinds of things. What is your definition of value for Another Broken Egg, and how do you follow that?
Yeah. It's a great question, especially as there's so much pressure on it. I've always thought of this as its value is what do you get for what you pay, right? So what do you get from Another Broken Egg is not only high quality ingredients, full service experience, great service. You get amazing food that you're not going to prepare yourself, right? You're not going to probably make a lobster brie omelet at home with champagne butter sauce. I mean, it's not probably going to happen. I mean, you may, but it's not easy. So, what you get, right? We've got lots of great stuff for what you get, and what you pay is obviously the price, but it's also what else you pay, right? You pay with your time. So, if we can reduce those wait times, that's part of what you pay, right? It's if we can make what you pay if you order online, we make that experience, as pain-free as possible. So you don't have to get frustrated by what you pay, which is, with your time and frustration. So we're always trying to minimize that impact of what you pay, not just through price, but through any, challenges you may have with using our brand, like even like the wait list, right? So you come in on the weekend, it's a 45-minute wait. You can get on the wait list ahead at home now. And so, even before you drive to our cafes, what the wait is, and you can take your time getting there. If it's 45 minutes, your name's on the list and you come in. And so those are all things that we can help with the value for our brand.
Well, very exciting to watch as Another Broken Egg moves into the lunch menu, expanded lunch menu, and everything you guys are doing. So Paul Macaluso, CEO of Another Broken Egg, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Sam.
That was my interview with Another Broken Egg Café's Paul Macaluso. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 4 takeaways. My first takeaway is that Daypart expansion is a potential traffic driver. Everybody's dealing with soft traffic right now, of course, as customers pull back on their discretionary spending, pulling back on their food, their spend on food away from home. As inflation continues to take its toll, restaurants are scrambling to figure out how do we get them back in our doors. Of course, discounting is one way you can do that. But I really like what Another Broken Egg Cafe is doing, and they're looking at their soft day parts and saying, how do we make it stronger? So it's a breakfast, brunch, and lunch concept, but breakfast and brunch are the strong angles here. So they said lunch, that's a little bit on the weaker side of our business. Why don't we just reinvest in that day part? Because then we give customers another reason to come in. If they're only coming in for breakfast and brunch, our new lunch menu might get their attention and say, here, come on in for lunch too. Or maybe there are customers out there who don't eat breakfast and brunch, don't know who that is, but who knows, maybe they're out there. And their attention's captured by the lunch menu instead. What are you soft in? What's your day part that maybe you're a little weak? It might be your traditional day parts, whether it's a breakfast, a lunch, or a dinner, or maybe it's even a non-traditional day part like a late morning or a mid-afternoon. But somewhere in that day, that time from when you open to when you close, you're soft in sales traditionally. That could be your opportunity to bring in new customers, because innovation really gets their attention and says, hey, here's another reason to come in at 3 p.m. Here's a snacking menu. Or, hey, you haven't come in for lunch, you usually eat breakfast here. Here's another reason to come in here and try lunch. Day parts, specifically your soft day parts, are a great lever to pull. And if you're trying to get customers new and old to come in, and it's not discounting. My second takeaway is that squeezing more out of your busiest periods is also an efficient way to grow. So I talked about, day parts. That's where you look at your week day parts and say, how can we beef that up so we can get some growth? But Paul also talked about the ways in which Another Broken Egg Cafe is getting efficient growth in its busy periods. So of course, for Another Broken Egg Cafe, that's in the weekends. It is a family dining concept. People love to go get breakfast and brunch, of course, on Saturdays and Sundays especially. So weekends busier than their weekdays. And Paul explained how, those weekends, you have lines out the door, you're trying to get your tables turned. How do you find opportunities to turn those tables faster to make that growth more efficient? So if you're getting X sales out of your Saturday and Sunday, can you get X plus by turning tables faster? That was what he was explaining here. And a few ways they're doing that. He said they're using technology to clear checks faster, to take orders faster. You can also get in line digitally, so it keeps things moving a lot more quickly. And again, that's an efficient way to look at your busiest periods. So it's busy now, but it can be even busier. You can get even more customers in that window of time on the weekends in Another Broken Egg Café's instance, so that your strong period becomes even stronger through those efficiencies. My third takeaway is that weekends and weekdays provide different but equally valuable customer bases. So I've talked about the day parts and how those are important to look at when you're trying to maximize your potential business. And we've talked about also the weekends and the busiest periods for a concept like Another Broken Egg Cafe. But what about the weekdays? Paul talked about the fact that this new lunch menu is also a way that they can capture attention during weekdays when the weekends are particularly strong. So lunch, of course, you have a business lunch, folks coming in from the office to go grab lunch. Maybe in the suburbs, folks working from home, they have an hour, they go grab lunch with a family member or a friend. There's also catering potential. So again, weekends and weekdays, family dining concepts, weekends especially, or we all know those are when they really shine. But weekdays are when you can also take a look at an opportunity for business. And I say they're different but equally valuable. It's because your weekend customer, they're going to be looking for something like, I want a slow morning, I want a mimosa, I have a bigger crowd because me and my friends are going out. A lunch customer might be more in a hurry. They only have so much time for lunch. But both of these customer bases are important. And I think you have to look at that weekday customer and that weekend customer a little bit different, but equally as valuable to driving that traffic to your restaurant. My fourth takeaway is that seasonal menus are a fast way to stand out from your competitors. Paul talked about the fact that, look, the family dining, breakfast, brunch space, it is crowded. We all see how many concepts are out there. And he talked about the fact that, Another Broken Egg, it feels like a lot of competitors have followed them. They have made some moves, some changes to the business, and some competitors have followed. These seasonal menus, though, that's where Paul says Another Broken Egg has an opportunity to really shine. And I say it's a fast way to stand out from competitors because if you invest in a new menu platform, a new store design, whatever it is, over time, the competitors catch up. They say, we want to do that too because we want to compete with you. But with seasonal menus, of course, they're seasonal. They come and go. So you have 4 a year, maybe you have 6 a year, whatever it is. Look into some ways you can do some limited time offers, some seasonal menus to add something different and special that your competitors will never have time to catch up and do because before you know it, that seasonal menu has moved on to the next season. Quality of ingredients is important to Another Broken Egg as far as these seasonal menus. They're high quality dishes using these high quality ingredients. By doing that on these seasonal menus, it is a combination of ingredients and elements that their competitors just can't keep up with. So something to keep in mind if you're also looking for a fast way to stand out from the crowd. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again and talk to you next week.